Imagine being able to glow in the dark. Literally, your body radiating an otherworldly light, but at a horrific cost. This was the terrifying reality for hundreds of female factory workers, known as the Radium Girls, who were poisoned by glow-in-the-dark paint in the early 20th century. Their bodies were so saturated with radium that they would glow in the dark. A phenomenon that was both mesmerizing and deadly. But here's where it gets dark. The companies they worked for knew about the dangers of radium poisoning, but they chose to ignore it, prioritizing profits over people. The story begins in 1917, at the United States Radium Factory in Orange, New Jersey, where women were hired to paint watch faces with a special glow-in-the-dark paint containing radium. The women, mostly teenagers, were told that the paint was harmless, and they were even encouraged to moisten their brushes with their tongues to get a finer point. Unbeknownst to them, the radium was seeping into their bodies, slowly poisoning them. One of the most notable Radium Girls was Catherine Donahue, who started working at the factory in 1922. At the age of 17, she would later become a leading figure in the fight for justice and women's rights. But for now, she was just another victim of industrial poisoning, unaware of the horrors that awaited her. As the years went by, the women began to fall ill, suffering from severe health problems, including anemia, bone cancer, and necrosis of the jaw. The companies, including United States Radium and Waterbury Clock Company, tried to cover up the issue, claiming that the women's illnesses were caused by everything from syphilis to poor hygiene. But the women knew that something was terribly wrong and they started to fight back. In 1927, 5 former employees of the United States Radium Factory, including Catherine Donahue, sued the company, claiming that they had been poisoned by radium. The case, known as Donahue vs. United States Radium, would become a landmark in the fight for women's rights and workers' safety. And this is where everything fell apart, as the company's attempts to cover up the scandal began to unravel. The trial was a sensationalized media event, with the Radium Girls' stories of suffering and bravery captivating the nation. The women's lawyer, Raymond Berry, presented evidence that the companies had knowingly exposed the women to radium, and that they had even instructed them to use their tongues to moisten their brushes. The companies, on the other hand, tried to discredit the women, claiming that they were somehow responsible for their own illnesses. But the evidence was mounting, and it was becoming clear that the companies had prioritized profits over people. Nobody talks about this part, but the women's bodies were so radioactive that they would set off Geiger counters. Even years after they had stopped working with radium, the radiation had become a part of them, a constant reminder of the horrors they had endured. As the trial progressed, the women's health began to deteriorate further. Many of them suffered from severe disfigurement, including necrosis of the jaw, which left them with gaping holes in their faces. The women's suffering was not just physical, but also emotional, as they struggled to come to terms with what had happened to them. Catherine Donahue, in particular, became a leading figure in the fight for justice, using her story to raise awareness about the dangers of industrial poisoning and the importance of workers' rights. But here's where it gets even darker. The company's attempts to silence the women were relentless, and they even went so far as to offer them hush money to drop the case. The women, however, refused to back down, and their bravery would eventually lead to a major victory. The trial finally came to an end in 1928, with the court ruling in favor of the Radium Girls. The companies were forced to pay compensation to the women, and the case set a precedent for workers' rights and safety. The Radium Girls' story had sparked a national outrage, and it would go on to inspire major changes in labor laws and regulations. The case also marked a significant milestone in the fight for women's rights, as it highlighted the exploitation and mistreatment of female workers in the industrial sector. And this is where the story takes a dramatic turn, as the Radium Girls' victory would have far-reaching consequences, inspiring a new era of activism and advocacy for workers' rights. The aftermath of the trial was marked by a series of reforms and regulations. aimed at protecting workers from industrial poisoning and other forms of exploitation. The Radium Girls story had sparked a national conversation about the importance of workers' safety and the need for stricter labor laws. The case also led to a significant increase in awareness about the dangers of radium and other toxic substances, and it inspired a new generation of activists and advocates to fight for workers' rights. Catherine Donahue, in particular, continued to fight for justice, using her story to raise awareness and inspire change. Her bravery and determination would eventually earn her a place in history as one of the most important figures in the fight for workers' rights and women's rights. The Radium Girls story is a powerful reminder of the dangers of industrial poisoning and the importance of workers' rights. Their bravery and determination in the face of overwhelming adversity inspired a nation, and their legacy continues to inspire new generations of activists and advocates. The story is also a testament to the power of the human spirit, as the women refuse to give up, even in the face of unimaginable suffering. As we look back on this dark chapter in history, we are reminded of the importance of protecting workers' rights and safety, and of the need for stricter regulations and laws to prevent such tragedies from happening again. And so, the story of the Radium Girls comes full circle, a haunting reminder of the horrors that can occur when profits are prioritized over people. Subscribe for more stories like this, and join us next time as we delve into another dark and fascinating chapter in history.